Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with a quick market update regarding the August 26th banned and restricted announcement, which hit the Pioneer format hard. So, as you can see with this image in front of you, Phoenix is on the rise. Arclight Phoenix. Now, Arclight Phoenix has a special place in my heart because it was my best spec I've ever done. So, when this was spoiled in standard, I bought a ton of copies at $1.50 and sold them all the way between $10 and $20 when there was a massive spike with this card hitting, I believe Modern at the time is where it really spiked up the cost of this card. It also did hit some standard decks. So Phoenix is back on the rise. The main reason for the fall of Phoenix is that it was printed a bunch of times in a row and as well as in challenger decks. But we're going to look at the data of how many of these are being sold and whether or not that you should get in on the action of the speculation that's going on right now. So let's look at why there's speculation on this particular card. We're going to touch on some of the other formats like Modern and other decks in Pioneer and look for some other cards that have the potential of going up due to this announcement. So the announcement today said in Pioneer that Amalia and Sorin were banned, and then in Modern, Nadu and Grief. So this is going to shake up both of those metas. Modern, not as much. I do think it's just going to eliminate two decks out of Modern, and then the other decks are going to fill that void. Pioneer, we might actually see a massive shakeup because these particular decks were super, super strong against any other sort of mid-range or aggro-based strategy. And this might leave a vacuum for those coming back in, and those particular decks actually do well against even Phoenix decks and control type decks. So it might breathe some new life in those aggro decks. However, let's just take a look right now at the meta game that was on Pioneer, according to Goldfish here. And this is where most people are going to get their resources. Goldfish can be off at sometimes, but you can definitely tell that Rakdos Vampires, which you actually include this mid-range, it was just absolutely dominating the meta. And I wouldn't say it was unbeatable. The win percentage wasn't crazy according to some of the statistics. It was a little bit over 56%, I believe, if the last time I looked at the win percentage. Typically, if it gives above over like 53%, there definitely is some cause for concern. But what really makes it concern is when everyone just decides to play a particular deck. And for that reason, that Wizards, even if it was a 50% deck, they like to shake up the meta just by doing a ban. And I agree with that at that point. We need diversity in gameplay. So Rakdos, problem with Sorin too, I called this a long time ago, that with every set that's printed, this card gets better and better. And it was just a matter of time before a vampire absolutely breaks Sorin. And we saw that with the vampire that came out of Murders of Karlov Manor. And I actually think that there's probably worse vampires in the future. Just imagine if like Atraxa was printed as a vampire, for example. And that's going to happen sometime in the future of Magic the Gathering. So Sorin now gets banned, which arguably needed to happen. And then with Amalia's a very uninteractive deck. They can win out of nowhere. Again, making aggro just completely obsolete in the format. So both these bans, I think, definitely will shake up the meta. And if you actually look at the next deck that is the top dog right now, it's Is It Phoenix? And people were calling for a Treasure Cruise ban for a long time. In fact, if you look at the Pro Tour, the last Pro Tour that happened with Pioneer, they asked a bunch of pros which card they wanted banned. And this is still with Sorin and Amalia in the mix. And most people did say Treasure Cruise, which I do agree. If you actually look back at some of my videos on the Rogue Deck Builder, my rant videos of cards that I think are going to be problematic, Treasure Cruise has been on there forever. So Is It Phoenix, though? So when people look at the data, they're going to, obviously their eye's going to go to the next deck, which is It Phoenix? And if you look at Is It Phoenix, Phoenix is the big card in the deck. So it's basically the whole reason to be playing this deck. Ledger, Shredder, Picklock, Prankster, they're just enabling like the Phoenix strategy. The Phoenix strategy is really the guts of this deck. And so if you look down in this deck, there's not really a lot of things that are worthwhile looking at to speculate into. You have like things like Steam Vents, Spiral Bluff Canal, River Glide Pathway. All those things see so much play in Pioneer, other decks, and Commander that it might not, like, I don't think a lot of people are all going to suddenly need to pick these suckers up. Phoenix decks also historically have balance between using Ledger Shredder and then using something else like the Flash Fairy that whenever another person draws a card, you draw a card. And so this, in my opinion, isn't solidified in its slot. We've also seen I'm trying to think of the card from Shadows of Innistrad that just bounces things back when you ever cast a certain amount of spells. Like those type of cards have typically leapfrogged each other. Like this has been in this slot, then it falls out of favor. But again, the constant of the Phoenix is the Phoenix. So of course, people are looking at Arclight Phoenix. Now, Arclight Phoenix has been on just a slow. I mean, this card has just been crashing. The main reason it's been printed a billion times, if we go back to how many printings with the Arclight Phoenix, that it was printed in a secret layer It was printed in Ravnica Remasters as a retro, a borderless anime, and all these have just so many copies. And then it was, I believe it was printed somewhere. Yeah, it was printed in a Challenger deck as well. So all of those things have led to the price of Arclight Phoenix just going down, 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 down. And Goldfish is way off here of the price of Phoenix because the actual market price of Phoenix is about $1. Now, all of those copies have pretty much been bought out under $1. If we actually look at the data, it does say, I'm loving that TCG Player added this here. So the total amount of sold in the last 3 months was 555, and the average daily sold was 6. And I don't think they've got today's date that's actually, I don't know if they incorporated it yet or if that takes some time. But we actually go and look at the data. Look at today. Today has just been a massive run on the Phoenix. So this particular person right here, this is probably the same buyer, bought all of these copies here. So 40, 10, and 30. Maybe this was the same seller actually, and just different speculators went in pretty deep on these particular cards. So one vendor had a lot of cards at $1.26 for the Phoenix. And have they been bought out, or is this $1.26 seller still there? Maybe it would have been one of these two. Oh, there's a bunch of them right here with that are still available for $1.26. But you can see how many have been sold just today with this announcement. And is it smart to get in on the action? I am not quite sure on Phoenix because there's still so much supply in Ravnica Remastered, and there's still so much supply in the Challenger decks that still exist. So right now, I would not fault you either way. I can't tell. Like, it does say there's only 966 left. And if we look how many have been eaten up just today, we have hundreds, over 100 today it looks like, so around that 100 mark. And so if this trend would continue, of course we're going to get this spike right off the bat. So this will be the first spike, is after the ban and announcement list. The next one will be after a major tournament. And so if Phoenix does perform well, this card definitely could see a spike. However, I'm not seeing this card going up much over $3 to $4. So if you're actually going to look at a card that currently is like $1, you can get it on $1 and sell for like $3 to $4. You really have to be careful of where you're selling that. You're going to have to find a buy list that is actually paying better than TCG Player, or anticipating to make it worth your while. Otherwise, you're going to be absolutely killed by fees. The other way you could do this is by taking these to like your local game store or other tournaments for people looking for play sets and trade play sets for cards that you can then sell for a higher value. That's typically that used to be the big gig with fetch lands back in the day, is how liquid they were, is you'd always want to trade for like fetch lands or shock lands because oftentimes buy lists give such a small spread and they're easy to sell. So in fact, if you ever remember the game Diablo, was it with the Ring of Jordan? Like, you traded everything for the Ring of Jordan because it was so liquid. So that's one of the approaches I'd take with Arclight Phoenix. I think this card's going to be a lot harder to move than it was when I initially when there's a brand new deck. I mean, this is an established deck. The Phoenix players already have their Phoenixes. It will lead to many of these other players that did have the Amalia decks and the Sorin decks to maybe move into Phoenix as their go-to deck now. But again, there's a lot of factors that are going against like Arclight Phoenix having a big, massive like 10x spike, which I don't expect from this card. There still is a lot of supply here, and it does have, even when you start going deeper into the $2 range, you still have a lot of cards, like pages and pages of these cards. Again, we have to take a quick look at this supply with current quantities and then make a guess here. And again, I think you have time. Like, all these $1.26 ones are still available. Our supply here at the store is still super high with Arclight Phoenix. I think it also was a promo, wasn't it? For like the Magic 30. They sent them to stores, and so they picked like one per year. I'm not quite sure if it was there too. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is Arclight Phoenix has a ton of supply. The Mythic is a little bit misleading just because how many times it's been printed. Of course, the Challenger deck also affects this. So my conclusion with this sucker is I wouldn't fault you for getting it on a few copies here, but I'm not quite sure going incredibly deep like some of these that have purchased 40. You definitely would have to have that other outlet like I was talking about to unload these, because I highly doubt seeing this go to the point to where then you can sell back on like TCG Players and eBays and actually make a decent profit, because the fees will just absolutely destroy you. So another place you can always check is Card Kingdom. If their inventory is going crazy, they still have 8 available. They are currently not offering the best buy list. They're only offering 50 cents. You can always check Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom seems to move slower on the competitive cards than it does Commander cards. So typically that's why Commander cards are a little bit better to get into one if you're looking for the buy list. You can also check some other buy lists. There's tools like I haven't mentioned the quiet speculation. There's like MTG Price. A lot of those websites will show you different various buy lists and then show you the best buy list. I think that's what quiet speculation actually does. It provides a service for you to put in your collection, and it sorts out the best place to actually buy list these, and then we'll actually calculate like the fees and if you go on eBay or TCG Player or Amazon to sell these type of stuff, and try to give you the best like piles of where you want your cards to go. So there will be a lot of interesting movement with Arclight Phoenix and some other cards. Maybe in a future video we'll have to look and see how this shakes up Modern and Standard. That might be, if we look down to Modern, you might see a similar thing happen. Let's see if we go over to Modern here. And so we have Bant Nadu. So if we go to Energy, let's just click on a card and see like what would be the card that has the highest potential of spiking because of it. Let's go to the Guide of Souls here. So let's go actually click on Guide of Souls. Let's look at TCG Player, and let's see if this sucker is actually moving like crazy. I think it picked up a border list. So let's go back to Guide of Souls. And let's just look at the normal copy and see the movement of this sucker. So currently 17 sold per day. Let's see if there's a big movement, huge movement in the market today. So here's another one that definitely does have the potential of going up in price. Yeah, this one's actually massive. So that's typically what I do when I'm looking for cards that are on the movie. These ban lists are just so duh, which is very, very, this is awesome, because this is where I used to make my bread and butter with being able to flip cards, was just on duh things like rotations and ban lists, and the data is just right there for you. And it just takes a little bit of research. I mean, just how quickly you can do this. You just look at these. Okay, are these, underprinted, overprinted? How is this going to affect the market? And you got to realize the psychology of people too. Like, they're going to be building these decks. Their Nadu deck gets banned. The next natural thing to do is like, okay, let's go into Boros Energy or Jeskai Control. So you can click on like Jeskai Control. Okay, of course, what's the card that is needed in Jeskai Control? The One Ring has a bunch of copies that are needed. You have even thing like the Tamio, and now Flage is in both of these, in Jeskai Control and in the Energy deck. So there could be a definite copy to actually look for. And I typically like to find a little bit older cards that have gone down in the long term that then could have, breathe some new life in these to go back up. And that's why Phoenix is a little bit, but Phoenix actually did have those reprints and stuff. So anyway, you can do a quick one of these for Modern or for Pioneer again to see. I bet Azorius Control might be seeing something similar. So Azorius Control, Wandering Emperor just rotated, probably isn't having a huge change here. Sunfall is still in Standard, Supreme Verdict, those type of stuff. There's not a lot in this mix here that I think is something that is like crazy to look at. But let's just look at Wandering Emperor real quick to see how many copies are being sold today on TCG Player. And again, this is TCG Player. What I'm doing right here, like I mentioned the other services and things you can do. This is just the quickest, easiest way to do research is just Goldfish onto TCG Player and look at the actual data of things. So yeah, not much movement here. So just this seems normal with this. So, but in the future, oftentimes you don't want it, when everyone's zigging, you want to be zagging. So this, finding cards that actually aren't being purchased at this time, might allow you to get in on better pricing of particular cards that eventually the demand will outstretch the supply. So like I said, if Azorius Control starts to be a deck that I typically think it's bad versus Phoenix, isn't it? I haven't played Modern or Pioneer in so long, but if it is a good deck, good matchup versus Phoenix, people are going to need the Wandering Emperors. This card is rotated. It might be a good time to get in on it. It's very, very low at this time. All these type of things are what my thought process is and when I decide to go in on cards and whatnot. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll try to give you more market updates as they are relevant. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.